Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Delighted to have in the studio with us today Frye and Diana Amble. And these two ladies represent a very unique ministry called Wildflowers Program. And I think you're going to find this to be fascinating. So Terry and Diana, nice to have you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's start with, what is Wildflowers? What is it?
It's a support group that ministers to women who have suffered childhood sexual abuse, as well as women who have had to deal with the painful ramifications of rape. So wow. It affects both of those.
Wow. And how did you come together? How did you ladies come together and do this?
Actually, Diana and I have known each other for a number of years, and with working in our community, we know that there are so many women affected by this. And so I go to Parkway, and my pastor and I had been talking about it for a while, and we pursued finding some curriculum, and so we found Into the Wildflowers, and it's actually promoted by the AACC, the American Association of Christian Counselors, as well. So we looked into the material, and it was wonderful. So we thought we need to bring it to Grants Pass.
Wow. So Diana, how long have you guys been doing this?
I've been working in the support group ministry for sexual abuse for maybe 15 years, but Terry and I have been doing this for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so what is it you do?
What we do is we have curriculum. We do a 12-week DVD series, and the women have homework that they do before each weekly meeting that we have, as well as for the first session, we require that the women meet individually with a therapist once a week. So it's twofold. It's the support group and it's the individual work that they do with a therapist, because our hope is that we create all the undergirding we can, all the help for these women as they're facing this stuff.
You know, we know this is a problem, and it's one of those problems we don't want to really deal with. We want it over here. But you guys are obviously been called to the Lord to reach in. How do you get women to admit and come forward for help?
I think creating a safe environment is the key. There's so much shame that comes along with the sexual abuse that it's hard for people to talk about it, to admit that it happened to them. And if we create an environment as the body of Christ that makes it safe for them to come forward, there's so much pain. They really do want the healing. They will come forward. But if we meet that with more shame, then that won't happen. So that's really the key.
Do they want it, but don't know how to get it? I mean, is there a stage here where it's kind of tough to come out and admit that it happened?
Usually what happens is that you get to a point in your life where your coping skills are no longer working. Mm-hmm. Your life starts to fall apart. You realize you need help. It would be really good if people didn't have to get to that point first, but oftentimes that's what it is.
All right, so how often do you meet?
We meet once a week.
Once a week?
Yes.
There at Parkway?
Yes, at Parkway.
Okay, Parkway Christian Center, that's there in Grants Pass. Let me ask you this. Some of the problems that you deal with, I mean, how does a woman begin to accept a loving God who they may think allowed this to happen to them? Is that a common?
That is very common, very common.
What happens?
Well, first of all, we let the ladies know that it's okay to be upset, that healing comes through relationship with God. And so if they are willing to go to God with their pain and to build that relationship with Him, that's where the healing comes from. We have intellectual reasons why things happen, free will, men gets to choose. Sometimes when you have, oftentimes people choose wrong, and in order for there to be free will, you have to have the right to choose evil. But that's an intellectual. And so it takes time for them to build the relationship with God that can heal those wounds, and really that is the bottom line. That's the only way for healing to come.
Wow, you must hear some incredible stories.
We do. We do. Diane and I were just talking on the way over here, and I think what is the greatest motivator for us and wanting to be a part of this is seeing women come a lot full circle. I mean, I want to say we won't come full circle till we get to heaven, but to see the depth of the healing that takes place in their own lives, in their relationships, their marriages changing, their relationship with their kids, their co-workers, it affects everything. It affects our community, you know.
How long does this take? As long as it takes, or, you know?
It definitely takes as long as it takes, but we have the privilege of seeing someone come in, starting their journey, not even being able to make eye contact, their body language is closed off, to by the time we're through with this, they've opened up. We've seen women start their own ministries, public speaking, you know, free to parent. I mean, it can take a long time because those lies are so deeply buried inside of them that it's a process of replacing the lies with truth, and that's a long process and maybe a lifetime process. But you do see amazing healing when you put yourself under God and ask Him to do that. He will.
And some of this has been hidden for a long time, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there an average?
Goodness. Diana and I were just talking. It's interesting because usually the women that we see are those that are probably in their 30s to 40s. And most often it's those who begin to have children and are raising their children, or they're in a point in their relationship with their marriage where it's been there for a while, their marriage has, and so they're wanting something more. And they're realizing that the depth of their healing is affecting their home. It's affecting their relationships, their close ones. So.
What, now, well, obviously, rape is an abuse. What about, how do you define it? I mean, I don't know how sensitive you want to go here, but...
Well, there's lots of definitions out there, and
yeah.
One of the ones that I like is any interaction between someone who's vulnerable, usually a child or an adolescent, for the sexual satisfaction of the person who's perpetrating. And that can be anyone in power. It can be a much older child, it can be an adult. And it's not just physical abuse, it's psychological, visual. So I think if we understand that the definition is much wider, then we can start to understand why our statistics are so high. And it doesn't take physical contact to affect you greatly. And that's one thing I want people to know, is that you don't have to have been physically touched to have some very serious wounds.
Is the setting group? Is it a group setting?
Yes, it is.
And you find that to be the most effective and safe zone, huh?
I think it has been, Perry, for the fact that women realize that there's someone else that's suffered, and they begin to recognize within themselves and other women, she too understands what I've walked through. Maybe not the same circumstance, but she understands. And it brings a sense of togetherness for these women. Their relationships that they're able to build with one another as well is huge. It's huge.
It's very healing to be able to speak how you feel and not have to explain yourself. You say, this is how I feel, and you look around the room and they're going, yeah. And that is so healing.
Well, you may want to check this out, and you meet weekly.
Right.
There at Parkway in Grants Pass, and I guess you can call the church to get involved.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing this?
Diana, 15 years. I've been doing this for about 3 or 4, going into my 4th year.
And how big are your groups?
On the average, we want about 6 women or so, but we're hoping that will grow.
Okay. And there's no time schedule. I see you have the DVD series.
We do have the DVDs. We start on Tuesday, September 23rd is our next start date.
What would you say to the woman who, listening to us, you've touched them deeply, but they just don't know if they can do it?
I would encourage them greatly that God has more for them, that He does have a future and a hope for them, and that their past doesn't have to define who they are right now, and that they won't be alone in this process. I think that is a great comfort in and of itself to know that not only will you have the Lord walking you through this, but you'll have others alongside you.
And no matter how afraid you are, if you take this step, I've seen it over and over and over again, people coming into the group the first time so scared they can barely walk through the door. And by the time they leave, they're smiling. And it's not that all their problems are solved, but they've made community, they've been accepted, they've been loved, they haven't been shamed, and there's so much power in that. I really encourage them to give it a try.
Fascinating. I commend you both for doing it. Obviously, you've been called to the Lord, and usually what God brings you through, He turns around and makes you a minister too. You've heard me say that. And it takes that kind of bonding in order for the process to heal. What's the hardest part about this?
I think the hardest part is walking through the door the first time.
The first time.
Yeah, that takes such courage, and I always tell the ladies that are sitting there, scared, that they're some of the most courageous people I've ever met, because owning that this happened to you, asking for help, and walking through that door takes so much courage. And it is a very difficult process of healing, but I've never met anyone who took that journey that was sorry they did.
Right.
Never.
Well, Terry and Diana, thank you. I'm always moved by this because I'm so glad to see the church reach out and do it. This is so needed, and this is the church's responsibility. We shouldn't just shove it off over to some other part of our, social welfare being or something like that. I'm glad to see the church, obviously bringing the faith component into it is big,
Very
right?
much so.
All right, contact Parkway Christian Center there in Grants Pass, and the next class starts September
23rd.
Okay, and make sure you get signed up for that, okay? Thanks, ladies, for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.